Loraine Whittaker doesn't speak, at least not with words. She lives in a quiet corner of odd West Virginia inside a weathered house tucked into the hills. You'll find her seated by the window, unmoving, sometimes looking out, sometimes not. Her world is still, marked by habit, pattern, and presence. She's not a name in the system, not a face in the crowd. But she is known, especially now. You've probably seen her image online. Viral videos, millions of views. She rarely moves, never talks. But she's there, in the frame, always watching, or being watched. Loraine is part of the Whittaker family, often called America's most inbred. It's a label that weighs heavy and says little. Her life is more than genetics. It's routine, familiarity, silence. She understands her space and those around her, and they understand her. She has a son. You won't hear much about him, just the occasional glimpse, a mention here or there. No one says how or when. But he's there, just like she is. There are things we don't know. About her past, about her mind. Some stories suggest a troubled beginning, maybe even violence. But this isn't a case file. It's a life, and Loraine lives it, on her terms, or as close as one can get. She doesn't ask for pity. She doesn't ask for attention. She doesn't ask for anything. But if you watch closely, you'll see. She has always been there. Quiet, still, present. Loraine Whittaker's life, like that of her siblings, begins in the folds of a rare genetic web, one that didn't start with her and likely won't end with her son. It began with a pair of identical twins, John and Henry Whittaker. Their children, cousins but genetically closer to half-siblings, married. That marriage was not a one-time event. It became a pattern. For at least 3 generations, the Whittakers married within themselves, often between close cousins. The result was a kind of genetic echo chamber, each generation more isolated, more affected, more bound by the invisible hand of inheritance. Loraine was born into this structure. According to what is known, she's the daughter of Gracie and John Whittaker, a couple who were already cousins by blood. Gracie's own parents were cousins as well. This means that by the time Loraine was born, the family's genetic diversity had thinned dangerously. Recessive traits, once harmless in the background, had nowhere to hide. They expressed themselves in physical features, in neurological delays, in speech and cognition. That's the science. But science doesn't explain everything. Loraine is not a diagnosis. She's not a syndrome. She's a person. She doesn't exist to illustrate a textbook. But her body does tell a story, of chromosomes meeting in ways they weren't meant to, of isolation repeating itself biologically. Some researchers describe this level of inbreeding with terms like elevated homozygosity and consanguinity coefficients. For most people, those are abstract. For Loraine, they are lived reality. The town of Odd, secluded in the Appalachian foothills, didn't create this alone. Geography played its part. So did poverty, stigma, and the silence that often surrounds families like hers. Over time, what began as a family line became a loop. And that loop tightened. So when Loraine was born, she carried more than her own DNA. She carried history. And unlike most of us, she couldn't leave it behind. She's not the face of the family, but she's often in the frame. Loraine Whittaker moves little, says nothing, and yet she's unmistakable. You'll see her in the background of many videos, slightly hunched, expression neutral, hair parted the same way each time. She sits with the same posture in the same chair, day after day. For many, she blends into the room. But once you notice her, you can't unsee her. She's believed to be in her 50s, though her official age remains uncertain. No birth certificate has been made public, no medical records. She doesn't appear in school rosters, employment databases, or health registries. Like much of her life, her identity is unofficial, undocumented, but not invisible. Loraine doesn't initiate conversation, but those around her seem to understand her. She responds to tone, to proximity, to routine. She doesn't need full sentences to make herself known. Her presence communicates. Who is she? She is a daughter, a sister, possibly a mother. She is part of a family that rarely explains itself, and a life that resists easy definition. She has never given an interview, never spoken into a microphone. But make no mistake, she has been speaking all along. You just have to learn how to listen. There is no small talk in the Whittaker house. Loraine doesn't speak with words, but that doesn't mean she doesn't communicate. Like many in her family, she uses sounds, grunts, short gasps, and the occasional hum. Gestures carry meaning. Eye movements, the way she tilts her head towards someone when she wants something. It's not a language outsiders understand, but inside the house, it works. It's easy to mistake silence for absence. But in Loraine's case, silence is filled with rhythm. She responds when called. She knows routines, when to sit, when to eat, when to step aside for someone else. Her communication isn't expressive in the traditional sense, but it's consistent, predictable, understood. Ray, her brother, is the most visibly nonverbal among them, often barking or grunting in response to visitors. Loraine is quieter. She rarely reacts to the camera. But when a sibling places a hand on her shoulder, she leans. When a familiar voice calls her name, she turns. Over time, patterns emerge. She expresses comfort, annoyance, curiosity, all without words. And for those who've spent time in the house, these signals become clear. There's no guidebook to her inner world, no clinical report. But Loraine's way of being is no accident. It's a form of connection built over decades, shaped by repetition, trust, and proximity. To someone outside, it might look like emptiness. But if you live inside that silence long enough, you realize it speaks. The house on the edge of odd West Virginia isn't just where Loraine lives, it's her entire world. The floors creak. The walls are stained from years without fresh paint. A couch doubles as a bed. A dining chair becomes a place of rest. There's no clear sense of time inside. Daylight filters in when it can, and routines unfold more by habit than by clock. Loraine knows her space. She rarely leaves it. She eats when food appears, moves only when needed, and sits for hours in the same place. It's not passivity, it's familiarity. She's not trapped exactly. She just doesn't go. Her siblings form the circle around her. Ray grunts. Timmy hums. Betty handles what little caretaking gets done. Food, blankets, comfort. Together, they maintain a kind of order. It's not clean, it's not quiet, but it's theirs. Visitors come and go, mostly now because of the videos, sometimes with donations, sometimes with questions. Loraine doesn't react much to either. The camera might as well be a piece of furniture. She has lived through deaths, Larry's passing, others unnamed. She has seen seasons come and go through the same window. Life events happen around her, but her rhythm stays the same. Some would call it stagnation. Others might call it survival. But for Loraine, this is life. Not paused, not broken, just continuous. Loraine never asked to be on camera, but she's been seen by millions. Since 2020, the Whittaker family has become an online phenomenon. Videos by filmmaker Mark Leda show their lives inside and out, unfiltered, raw, and controversial. Loraine appears in many of them, often silent, often still, always watched. Some say the exposure brought help. Donations, food, clothes, even medical visits for some family members. Leda's stated goal was to humanize those whom society tends to ignore. He filmed the Whittakers to show that, despite their limitations, they are people, real, full, deserving of dignity. But not everyone agrees. Critics point to the tone of the videos, how the camera lingers on deformities, how silence is used for effect, how titles emphasize inbreeding over identity. Some call it poverty porn, others exploitation masked as compassion. Loraine, in particular, is rarely acknowledged directly. She's in the frame, but not in the narrative. She doesn't speak. She's never interviewed. No one asks her opinion, perhaps because they assume she can't give one. But the question remains, when does documenting become exposing? When does awareness become entertainment? The viral attention changed their lives. People now show up to take photos. Locals either protect them or avoid them. The family, once hidden by geography, is now defined by global scrutiny. And Loraine? She remains mostly unmoved. The camera watches. She does not perform. In some frames, she stares back, calm, blank, present. It's hard to know what she thinks of it all, or if she thinks about it at all. But that doesn't make the question disappear. It only makes it harder to answer. There's a way people look at Loraine, not directly, not with malice, but with that quick, instinctive glance. The kind reserved for things we don't understand, or don't want to. Her appearance invites questions rarely spoken aloud. Her silence even more. Online, words like creepy, mutant, or inbred float in comment sections, detached from the real person they target. And that's the danger of the label. It makes her a type, not a person. Inbreeding becomes shorthand for a list of assumptions about intelligence, behavior, even worth. In Appalachian history, it has long been used to dehumanize the rural poor, to explain poverty not as systemic failure, but as personal defect. It strips people like Loraine of context and often of dignity. Her physical features, shaped by generations of closed genetics, are read as warnings. Her stillness mistaken for emptiness. Her sounds interpreted as animalistic. And just like that, she's no longer Loraine. She's a symbol, a spectacle. This isn't new. Societies have long othered those who look different, speak differently, or don't conform to expectations of productivity or expression. Oh, what's new is the reach. Millions of eyes, instant judgment, permanent digital records. And yet, Loraine doesn't fight this image. She doesn't protest. She simply exists. That alone becomes an act of quiet defiance. Because in a world that often treats her as less, her presence says otherwise. She is still here. Most people don't talk about Loraine. They don't point or stare or whisper. They simply pass by. For much of her life, Loraine has lived in the background, literally and figuratively, not hidden but unnoticed. She's been in videos watched by millions, yet few know her name. She's present in the frame, but absent from the conversation. That's the quieter form of stigma, not cruelty, but indifference. In the broader narrative, she's rarely mentioned, not interviewed, not highlighted. While others in the family speak or interact, Loraine is often still. And because she doesn't engage, the world assumes there's nothing there to see. But what if we've just never taken the time to look? Her life, shaped by isolation and circumstance, unfolds quietly. She doesn't seek the spotlight. She doesn't need validation. She lives in a rhythm that is her own, unchanged by outside curiosity or viral attention. The real story isn't how people judge her. It's how few bother to ask who she is. Society often defines worth through productivity, speech, charisma. But Loraine defies those terms simply by existing outside them. She doesn't explain herself. She doesn't have to. And in a world that measures everything by visibility and noise, Loraine's quiet presence is a form of quiet truth. She is not a symbol, not a warning, not a case study. She's a person, and she's still here,